The Galactic Accord Hall was a massive ring of white stone and cold light, floating in orbit around a dying red star. 34 species sent their representatives here every 10 years to talk, argue, and pretend they cared about peace. The hall was built to impress. Tall ceilings, wide floors, seats carved from alien metals that hummed with a faint warmth. Every species had a section, and every section was decorated with the symbols of their homeworld. Earth's section was in the back corner. 3 chairs, no decorations, no flag. That was the rule now. Humanity had lost its voting seat 3 summits ago, and with it, most of its dignity in this room. They were observers. They could watch. They could listen. They could not speak unless invited. Admiral Tejo sat in the middle chair. He was a tall man in his mid-50s, with short gray hair and a face that never showed what he was thinking. He wore his black military uniform with no medals, no ribbons. He did not believe in decorating himself. He believed in results. Before this assignment, he had spent 20 years commanding Earth's fleets during the Belt Rebellions, a brutal civil conflict that taught him one important lesson. Patience wins wars, not anger. To his left sat Ambassador Yuna. She was younger, early 30s, with sharp eyes and a tired expression that she could not hide, no matter how hard she tried. Yuna had grown up on a colony world called New Incheon. She had never seen Earth's sky with her own eyes. But she had spent the last 7 years fighting for Earth's place in galactic politics, and every year the fight got harder and the respect got thinner. She was the last human willing to sit in this room and be insulted with a polite smile. To Tejo's right sat Captain Dowan. He was quiet, solid, and loyal. He commanded the flagship Hwasong, the pride of Earth's combined fleet. Dowan kept a small notebook in his jacket pocket. In it, he had written every treaty Earth had signed, and every time an alien species had broken those treaties without punishment. The notebook was almost full. The summit opened the way it always did. Long speeches, empty promises. The Pelori hegemony spoke first, as they always demanded. Their speaker was a towering insectoid creature with 4 arms and a voice that clicked and buzzed through a translation device hanging around its neck. The Pelori controlled the largest territory in the galaxy and never let anyone forget it. The speech went on for nearly an hour. Words like stability, cooperation, and mutual respect filled the air like smoke. Tejo listened without moving. Yuna took notes. Dowan stared straight ahead. Then, the Pelori speaker turned toward the human section. His 4 arms spread wide, and the hall fell silent. "And let us not forget," the speaker said, his translated voice dripping with amusement, "that some species in this hall still believe they deserve a seat at the table. Humanity, a species of short-lived scavengers who mistake stubbornness for strength. They expand into systems they cannot hold. They build ships they cannot crew. And yet they sit here, year after year, like children begging for attention at an adult gathering." Laughter broke out across the hall, not from every delegation, but from enough. The Uthari delegate, a pale-skinned humanoid with 6 fingers on each hand, leaned into his own microphone. "Perhaps we should rename Earth's section, call it the Nursery." More laughter. The Drenhi Collective's ambassador, a short creature wrapped in metallic robes, spoke next. "In all seriousness, the collective believes it is time to discuss protective stewardship over human colonies. They clearly cannot manage themselves. It would be a kindness. Protective stewardship." Yuna knew what that meant. Everyone in the hall knew what that meant. It meant annexation. It meant taking Earth's colonies and putting them under alien control, like children being handed to foster parents who did not love them. Yuna stood up. Her chair scraped against the floor, and the sound cut through the laughter. She reached for her microphone. It was dead. She pressed the button again. Nothing. The moderators had disabled it. This had happened before, twice at the last summit, but it never got easier. The message was clear. You do not speak here. You listen. Yuna stood there for 3 long seconds, her hand on the silent microphone, her face burning. Then she sat down. She did not look at Taeho. She did not look at anyone. The hall moved on. Other species spoke. Other topics were raised. The humans sat in their corner and said nothing, because nothing was what they were allowed to say. But Admiral Taeho was not doing nothing. He was recording. A small device in his collar captured every word, every laugh, every insult. He had been recording every summit for 15 years. Not for evidence, not for complaints. Earth had tried complaining. Complaints went nowhere, in a hall where you had no vote and no voice. Taeho was recording for the file that sat in a locked database on Earth, in a bunker buried beneath the mountains of Gangwon Province, a file with a simple name, Sunset. That night, after the session ended, and the delegations returned to their quarters on the station, Taeho sat alone in his small room. He poured himself a glass of water. He drank it slowly. Then he opened a secure channel and typed a single message to Earth. They have made their position clear. Recommend Sunset Protocol. He sent it and closed the channel. Then he sat in silence for a long time, looking out the window at the dying red star. He was not angry. He was not sad. He had passed through those feelings years ago. What he felt now was something colder and quieter. It was certainty. 8 light years away, on Earth, the message arrived in the bunker beneath Gangwon Province at 3:47 in the morning. Director Suji was awake. She was always awake. She was a woman in her late 40s, with thin glasses and hands that never shook, no matter what she was reading. She had built her career on one idea, that Earth would one day need a way out of every promise it had ever made, all at once, in a single night. She opened the message. She read it twice. Then she opened the locked file, marked Sunset. Inside were 142 documents, treaties, accords, pacts, conventions. Every agreement Earth had signed since first contact, and beside each one, a pre-written withdrawal notice, ready to send. Suji picked up her phone and called the Secretary General of the United Terran Compact. It is time, she said. She hung up and whispered to the empty room. Finally, the emergency session of the United Terran Compact began 6 hours after Taeho's message reached Earth. It was held in a sealed chamber deep underground, far from any signal that could leak to the galactic communication networks. 14 members sat around a curved table. They represented every major government, military branch, and colonial territory that humanity controlled. Director Suji stood at the front of the room with a single screen behind her. She did not waste time with introductions or speeches. She played the recording from the summit. Every delegate heard the Pelori speaker call humanity scavengers. They heard the Uthari delegate suggest renaming Earth's section the Nursery. They heard the Drenhi ambassador propose taking control of human colonies. And they heard the silence when Yuna's microphone was cut. When the recording ended, Suji turned off the screen. Sunset Protocol, she said. Full withdrawal from all 142 interstellar agreements. Simultaneous. Immediate. No negotiations. No warnings. No requests for reconsideration. The room was quiet for 10 seconds. Then the Secretary General spoke. Vote. Every hand went up. The vote was unanimous. Suji returned to her office and began the process she had spent 11 years preparing. Every withdrawal notice had been written, reviewed, and formatted according to the legal requirements of each individual treaty. Some treaties required 30 days' notice, some required 90. Some required a formal hearing before a galactic tribunal. Suji did not care. She was sending all 142 notices at once, effective immediately. If the aliens wanted to argue about procedure, they could argue with an empty chair. She called Lieutenant Hana aboard the Hwasong. Hana was 26 years old. She had joined the fleet straight out of the academy and had been assigned to the flagship's communications division. She was good at her job, fast, accurate, and calm under pressure. But she had never handled anything like what Suji was about to send her. "Lieutenant," Suji said over the encrypted channel, "you will receive a data package in the next 4 minutes. It contains 142 diplomatic transmissions. You will send all of them simultaneously to every galactic government and to the Accord Hall's central archive. You will use Protocol 9 encryption for the outgoing channel, and you will confirm delivery for each one. Do you understand?" "Yes, Director," Hana said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were not. She could feel the weight of something enormous pressing down on the moment. "One more thing," Suji said. "Attached to the package is a diplomatic statement drafted by Ambassador Yuna. That statement goes out with every notice. It is the last thing we will say to them for a while. Make sure it is heard." Hana opened it on her console and stared at the list. Trade agreements, navigation treaties, the FTL Drive Limitation Accord, the Biological Weapons Convention, territorial boundary agreements, non-proliferation pacts, arms limitation treaties, scientific exchange programs, refugee conventions, emergency aid compacts, all of them marked for immediate withdrawal. At exactly 000 UTC, Hana pressed the transmit button. 142 notices flew out across the galaxy at the speed of light, relayed through every communication beacon between Earth and the farthest galactic capital, and with them, a single statement from Ambassador Yuna, written in clear, plain language that needed no translation. The United Terran Compact, having endured decades of systematic exclusion, public humiliation, and unreciprocated compliance, hereby withdraws from all interstellar agreements, effective immediately. Earth owes the galaxy nothing. The galaxy will find that Earth needed nothing. The first reaction came from the Pelori hegemony within the hour. Their official response was short. "We note humanity's emotional outburst and expect a retraction within the standard cooling period." The Uthari Communion released a public statement calling the withdrawal a tantrum by a minor species. Their delegate told reporters that humans would come crawling back within a week, begging for trade access and protection. The Drenhai Collective said nothing publicly, but began running simulations in private. On the Pale Horizon station, the news spread through the delegations like fire. Most of them laughed. A few did not. The ones who did not laugh were the ones who understood treaties, not as pieces of paper, but as chains. And they understood what it meant when someone removed every chain at once. Without the FTL Limitation Accord, Earth was no longer restricted to slow, outdated Class II drives. For decades, humanity had been forced to use engines that were 2 generations behind what the Pelori and Uthari flew. That restriction was now gone. Without the territorial boundary accords, Earth's colonies were no longer locked into narrow corridors of approved space. Humanity could expand in any direction, into any unclaimed system, without asking permission. Without the Non-Proliferation Pact, Earth could build any weapon it wanted, any size, any type, no inspections, no limits, no oversight. Without the trade agreements, Earth owed nothing to anyone, no tariffs, no quotas, no obligations to share resources or technology. The aliens had written these treaties to control humanity. They had dressed them up in words like cooperation and mutual benefit, but the truth was simpler. The treaties were a cage, and Earth had been sitting inside it quietly for decades, following every rule, honoring every clause, while the aliens broke those same rules whenever it suited them. Now the cage was open, on Earth's moon, in a facility called the Threshold Research Institute. Dr. Jinu received a one-word message from Director Suji. The message said, "Unlocked." Jinu was a thin man with messy hair and circles under his eyes that never went away. He had spent 15 years designing technologies that Earth was not allowed to build. Faster drives, better shields, weapons that could crack a Pelori dreadnought open like an egg. He had built prototypes, he had run tests, and then he had locked everything away in sealed vaults because the treaties said he must. He read Suji's message 3 times. Then he walked down a long hallway to a door he had not opened in 6 years. Behind that door were machines that hummed with a deep, low sound, the sound of power waiting to be used. He powered them on, one by one. The hum grew louder. Back on the Hwasong, Captain Darwin stood on the bridge, watching the border sensors light up with alien ship movements. The Pelori were scrambling patrol fleets. The Uthari were repositioning their forward bases. Everyone was moving, but nobody knew where to go or what to do, because nobody had expected this. Darwin reached into his jacket and pulled out his notebook, the one filled with every broken promise, every violated clause, every insult that humanity had swallowed in silence. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he closed it and put it away. "We do not need the list anymore," he said quietly to the empty bridge. "We are writing a new one." Lieutenant Hana, still at her console, watched the delivery confirmations roll in. 142 green lights. Every notice delivered. Every treaty dead. She sat back in her chair and let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. She did not fully understand what she had just done. But she understood that the galaxy had woken up this morning thinking humanity was small, quiet, and obedient. By tomorrow, they would know better. 2 weeks passed after the withdrawal, and the galaxy waited for humanity to collapse. The Pelori hegemony predicted economic ruin within days. The Uthari Communion said Earth's colonies would starve without access to galactic trade routes. News broadcasts across a dozen alien worlds ran stories about the foolish little species that had thrown away its only lifeline in a fit of pride. None of it happened. Earth did not collapse. Earth did not starve. Earth did not beg. Instead, something far worse happened, at least from the aliens' point of view. Earth began to change. The first sign came from the Threshold Research Institute on the moon. Dr. Jinu had not slept more than 3 hours a night since receiving Director Suji's message. He did not need sleep. He needed time. And now he had something better than time. He had permission. For 15 years he had designed machines that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. For 15 years he had locked them away because the treaties demanded it. Now the treaties were dead, and Jinu was alive with purpose. The first technology to come out of the vaults was the Class 7 FTL drive. The galactic standard was Class 4. The Pelori flew Class 5 drives, which they considered the finest engines in existence. Earth had been limited to Class 2 under the FTL Limitation Accord. Slow, clumsy drives that made every journey take 3 times longer than it needed to. The Class 7 was something else entirely. Jinu had designed it 8 years ago, tested a prototype in secret 6 years ago, and then sealed it away. It was not just faster than a Class 5. It was faster than anything the galaxy had ever seen. A journey that took a Pelori cruiser 3 days would take a Class 7 ship 4 hours. The first pilot to fly it was a woman named Dunji. She was 31 years old, lean and sharp, with steady hands and a reputation for being completely calm in situations that would make most people scream. Her call sign was Comet, and she had earned it during test flights in Earth's atmosphere that broke speed records nobody thought could be broken. Eunji climbed into the cockpit of the Biol, which meant star in the old Korean language. It was a sleek ship, smaller than a standard cruiser, built for speed and nothing else. She ran her hands over the controls and felt the engine humming beneath her like a heartbeat. "Comet," said the voice of Dr. Jinu through her headset. "You are clear for Class 7 activation. The flight path takes you through Corridor 19. Eunji smiled. Corridor 19 was a Pelori-monitored shipping lane. Every ship that passed through it was tracked by Pelori sensors. Jinu had chosen this route on purpose. Let us give them something to track. She activated the drive. The stars stretched into lines, and the Biol leaped forward like a stone thrown from a sling. Eunji felt the acceleration press her into her seat, but it was smooth, not the rough, shaking ride of a Class 2 drive. This was clean. This was power. She crossed Corridor 19 in 11 minutes. The Pelori monitoring station detected her entry. They registered a ship moving at a speed their systems classified as impossible. By the time they tried to lock onto her signal, she was gone. Their sensors showed a ghost, a blur that appeared and vanished before they could even identify it. The Pelori station commander sent an urgent report to his superiors. A human ship had just crossed their most heavily monitored corridor, at a speed that exceeded anything in the Pelori fleet. The report was classified immediately. The data was already leaking. While Eunji was making history in space, General Minho was making history on the ground. Minho was the commander of Earth's Colonial Defense Grid, a network that, until 2 weeks ago, did not officially exist. He was a big man with a scarred face and a voice that sounded like gravel being poured into a metal bucket. He had spent 20 years building something that the galaxy did not know about. During all those decades of treaty compliance, Earth had been assigned dozens of star systems that were classified as empty. No habitable planets, no valuable resources, nothing worth claiming. The aliens had given these systems to humanity as a kind of joke. Useless leftovers for a useless species. Minho had turned every single one of those systems into a fortress. Hidden inside hollowed-out moons were weapons platforms capable of destroying capital ships. Buried beneath asteroid surfaces were sensor arrays that could detect a fleet jumping into a system before the fleet even finished its jump. Disguised as mining equipment in orbit around dead planets were automated shipyards that could produce warships without a single human worker. 40 systems, all connected, all hidden, all waiting. Minho activated the grid with a single command from his headquarters on the colony world of New Incheon. Across 40 systems, lights turned on, machines woke up, weapons charged. The colonial defense grid came alive like a sleeping giant, opening its eyes. The Pelori hegemony, growing nervous, sent a diplomatic envoy to demand that Earth stop what it called provocations. The envoy arrived at the Hwasong, expecting to meet a desperate, weakened Admiral Taeho. Instead, they found a man sitting calmly at a table with a pot of tea. Taeho greeted them politely. He poured them tea. Then, without changing his tone, he turned on a screen behind him and showed them a live feed from Earth's new shipyards. The envoys watched in silence as warship after warship rolled off production lines that moved with a speed and efficiency that should not have been possible. "We were never weak," Taeho said, sipping his tea. "We were patient. Those are not the same thing." The Pelori envoys left without finishing their tea. Their hands were shaking. Within days, the Uthari Communion called for an emergency session of the Galactic Council. 17 species attended. They argued about what to do for 3 days straight. Some wanted sanctions. Some wanted a blockade. Some wanted to pretend nothing was happening and hope it would stop. They agreed on nothing. They accomplished nothing. Because for the first time in galactic history, The species they had laughed at, mocked, silenced, and dismissed was not asking for permission. Humanity was not requesting a seat at the table. Humanity was building its own table, and the sound of hammers echoed across every border. Ambassador Yuna watched the council's debates from her quarters on the Pale Horizon station. She had requested to attend the emergency session, but her request was denied. Old habits die hard, she thought. Her communicator buzzed, a message from Director Suji back on Earth. They are going to try to form a coalition against us. Let them. By the time they agree on lunch, we will own the stars. Yuna read the message twice and set down her communicator. She walked to the window and looked out at the dying red star that the station orbited. It was fading, slowly, the way all stars do. But somewhere beyond it, in systems the aliens thought were empty, humanity's new stars were just beginning to burn. For the first time in 7 years of sitting in that hall, being silenced and mocked and ignored, Yuna was not afraid. 1 month after the withdrawal, the galaxy finally did what Admiral Tejo always knew it would do. It formed a coalition. The Pelori Hegemony and the Uthari Communion led the effort. They brought in 4 smaller species, the Drenhi Collective, the Vasham Republic, the Tenari Syndicate, and the Orally Federation. Together they assembled an armada of 600 warships. It was the largest combined fleet the galaxy had seen in over a century. Pelori dreadnoughts with their massive plasma cannons. Uthari stealth frigates that could disappear from sensors for short periods. Drenhi gunships, Vashan carriers loaded with fighter craft. It was meant to be overwhelming. It was meant to be terrifying. The plan was simple. Fly the armada to Earth's border. Park it there. Show humanity the full weight of galactic military power and force them back into the treaty framework. Just the message. Come back in line, or face what comes next. They kept the plan secret. They communicated through encrypted channels. They staged their ships in deep space, far from any known human sensor range. They set a departure time and told no one outside the coalition. They told no one. But Earth already knew. Analyst Kyuho had been living on the Drenhi homeworld for 7 years under the identity of a trade consultant. He was a small, quiet man with a forgettable face and a gift for listening. He attended business meetings, trade conferences, and diplomatic receptions. He smiled politely, shook hands with all 6 of his Drenhi contacts' fingers, and never said anything interesting. In reality, Kyuho was one of Earth's deepest intelligence assets. He had built a network of information sources inside the Drenhi government over the course of years, not through bribery or threats, but through patience and genuine relationships. They talked around him, and Kyuho listened to everything. 12 hours before the coalition fleet was scheduled to launch, Kyuho sent an encrypted burst transmission to Earth. The message contained the fleet composition, staging coordinates, departure time, planned route, and the names of every commanding officer in the armada. Director Suji received the message in her bunker. She read it once, then forwarded it to Admiral Tejo with a single note. As expected, proceed with Iron Tide. Tejo did not mobilize Earth's full fleet. He did not call a general alert. He did not make any public statements. Instead, he contacted Commander Seowu. Seowu was 40 years old and had been commanding warships since she was 23. She led a rapid deployment carrier group called Iron Tide. 40 ships, hand-picked crews, the best equipment Earth had. She was known for 2 things. She never raised her voice, and she never lost. Take Iron Tide to the Mara border system. Arrive before the coalition does. Standard formation. Running lights on. Weapons cold. Seowu understood immediately. You want them to see us. I want them to see 40 ships, Tejo said, and I want them to wonder about the ones they cannot see. Iron Tide moved fast. Equipped with the new Class 7 drives, Seowoo's 40 ships crossed half the galaxy in hours, and arrived at the Mara system well before the Coalition fleet. They arranged themselves in a calm, clean formation, evenly spaced, lights glowing, weapons powered down. Behind them, visible on long-range sensors, were the orbital shipyards of New Incheon, visibly producing new warships in real time. A message was clear. These 40 ships are not all we have. They are just the ones we chose to show you. The Coalition Armada arrived 6 hours later. 600 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and spread across the system in an attack formation that was designed to intimidate. Pelori dreadnoughts in the center, Uthari frigates on the flanks, smaller ships filling the daps. They found Seowoo's 40 ships waiting for them like stones in a river, unmoved and unimpressed. The Pelori fleet commander opened a channel. "Human vessels, you are outnumbered 15 to 1. Stand down and transmit your willingness to return to the treaty framework. This is your only warning." Seowoo sat in her command chair with her legs crossed and her hands folded in her lap. She let the message hang in the silence for 10 seconds before she responded. "You are welcome to test us," she said. Her voice was calm and almost friendly. "But I should tell you, the 40 ships you see are the ones we wanted you to see." She nodded to her tactical officer, who sent a single signal to General Minho on New Incheon. Across 3 adjacent systems, the Colonial Defense Grid activated its outer ring. Hidden weapons platforms powered up inside hollowed-out moons. Sensor arrays buried in asteroids locked onto every ship in the Coalition fleet. Automated defense stations disguised as mining rigs turned their guns toward the Armada. On every Coalition ship, alarms began to scream. Weapons locks, thousands of them, appeared on their tactical displays, from directions they had not scanned, from systems they had classified as empty, from positions they did not know existed. The Coalition fleet was surrounded. They had flown into a kill box, and they had not seen a single wall until the walls lit up. The Pelori commander stared at his tactical display. Red targeting indicators covered his fleet like a net. Every ship was locked. Every escape route was blocked. His 600 warships, the largest armada in a century, had been outwitted by a species that was supposed to be primitive. No shots were fired. No missiles launched. The two forces sat in silence, staring at each other across the dark, while thousands of weapons held steady and the seconds stretched into minutes. The Coalition fleet held its position for 9 hours. During those 9 hours, several things happened. The 4 smaller species in the Coalition, the Drenhi, the Vashan, the Teneri, and the Orally, quietly calculated their odds and did not like the numbers. The Uthari stealth frigates attempted to disappear from sensors, and Earth systems tracked them perfectly. The Pelori commander requested reinforcements from his homeworld, and was told none were available. After 9 hours, the Coalition fleet withdrew. They simply turned and left, one ship at a time, until the Mara system was empty except for Iron Tide. As the last Pelori dreadnought jumped away, its commander sent a private message to Seowoo. "How long have you been preparing for this?" Seowoo uncrossed her legs and leaned forward in her chair. She typed her response with one hand. "Since the first time you laughed at us." The Coalition fell apart within days. The Drenhi Collective opened a secret back channel to Earth, offering trade negotiations. The Vashan Republic quietly pulled its ships back to its own borders and issued a statement about reassessing diplomatic priorities. The Tenari and the Oruli simply went silent. The Uthari Communion, proud and stubborn, refused to admit anything had changed. But inside their government, debates raged. Their intelligence services had failed to detect Earth's hidden infrastructure. Their military planners had underestimated human technology by at least 2 generations. Their entire strategy for dealing with humanity, mock them, restrict them, keep them small, had not only failed, it had made things worse. Every year they had spent humiliating Earth was a year Earth had spent preparing. The Pelori hegemony said nothing publicly. Their silence was louder than any speech. In her bunker on Earth, Director Suji convened a briefing with the Terran Compact leadership. She stood at the front of the room with the same calm expression she always wore. The expression of a woman who had planned for this moment since before most of the people in the room knew her name. "The coalition is broken," she said. "The smaller species are ready to talk. The Uthari are fighting among themselves. The Pelori are afraid, even if they will not say it." She paused and looked at every face in the room. "But this time, we write the terms." 3 months after the night Lieutenant Hana transmitted 142 withdrawal notices into the dark, the Galactic Council requested a new summit. The request came not from one species, but from all of them. A joint message signed by every member of the Council, including the Pelori hegemony, including the Uthari communion, including the small species that had tried to annex human colonies and now could not meet a human's eyes without looking away. The request was polite. It was careful. It used words like dialogue and mutual understanding and fresh beginning. It was delivered through proper diplomatic channels with full protocol, and it included something that no previous summit invitation had ever included for humanity: full voting rights and full speaking privileges. Admiral Tejo read the invitation in his quarters aboard the Hwasong. He read it twice, then set it down and poured himself a glass of water, just as he had on the night he sent the sunset message. He drank slowly. Then he called Ambassador Yuna. "They want a summit," he said. "I know," Yuna said. She had already received her own copy. "Will you go?" "No," Tejo said. "I am a soldier. This part is yours. It was always going to be yours." Yuna was quiet for a moment. "They silenced my microphone last time." "They will not silence it this time," Tejo said. "And if they try, the Hwasong is close enough to remind them." Yuna laughed. It was the first real laugh she had allowed herself in months. She arrived at the Galactic Accord Hall on a shuttle from New Incheon, wearing a simple dark suit with no decorations, no medals, no symbols of rank. She carried nothing but a small data tablet and the speech she had written herself, without help from Director Suji or anyone else. She had earned it with 7 years of silence. The hall looked the same as it always had: white stone, cold light, tall ceilings, seats carved from alien metals. But something was different. When Yuna walked through the main entrance, every delegation stood. All 34 species rose from their seats as a human walked into the room. It was the first time this had ever happened. The Pelori speaker stood with his forearms pressed to his sides. The Uthari delegate stood with his 6-fingered hands clasped in front of him. The Drenhi ambassador stood wrapped in metallic robes that shimmered as she moved. Yuna walked to the podium at the center of the hall. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. She placed her data tablet on the stand and looked out at the faces: alien faces, strange faces, faces that had laughed at her, mocked her, cut her microphone, called her species vermin and scavengers and children. "Not yet. 3 months ago," she began, "I stood in this hall and tried to speak. My microphone was turned off. I was silenced. Not for the first time. It had happened before, at the previous summit, and the summit before that. Every time I came to this hall, I came hoping to be heard, and every time I was reminded that humanity did not matter enough to be listened to. The hall was perfectly still. You called us scavengers. You called us vermin. You proposed taking our colonies from us and calling it kindness. You laughed at us. And the worst part was not the insults. The worst part was that you believed them. You truly believed that we were small and weak and that we would always stay that way." She paused and let the silence fill the room. "You were wrong." Yuna activated her data tablet and projected a document onto the main screen of the hall. It was long, detailed, and written in clear language that left no room for misunderstanding. Director Suji had drafted the framework. Yuna had rewritten every word to make sure it said exactly what she wanted it to say. Earth is willing to sign new agreements, she said, but not under the old system. The old system was designed to control us, and we will not return to it. Here are our terms. She read them out, one by one. Her voice was steady and carried to every corner of the hall. Earth would only sign bilateral treaties, individual agreements between Earth and each species, negotiated face to face. No more submitting to a council that had the power to silence its members. No more hiding behind group votes where the powerful species decided everything and the rest followed. Any species that wanted to trade with Earth had to formally recognize every human colony as sovereign territory. No more talk of protective stewardship. No more suggesting that human worlds should be managed by alien governments. Human worlds belong to humans, and that was not open for discussion. The FTL Limitation Accord was dead and would stay dead. Earth would share Class 7 drive technology with any species that wanted it, but only those that signed non-aggression pacts on Earth's terms. Power would be shared, but it would be shared fairly, not forced into the hands of species that had spent decades using their technological advantage to bully others. And finally, a mutual defense clause. Any attack on any human world, no matter how small, no matter how far from Earth, would be treated as an attack on Earth itself. Humanity would defend its people with everything it had. No limits, no restrictions, no mercy for those who mistook patience for weakness. Yuna finished reading and looked up from her tablet. The hall was silent. 34 delegations sat in their seats and processed what they had just heard. These were not requests. These were not suggestions. These were the terms of a species that had proven it could stand alone and was now choosing, freely, without desperation, to offer its hand. The Pelori speaker rose slowly from his seat. He was old, older than he had been at the last summit, and something in his posture had changed. The arrogance was still there, buried deep, but on the surface there was something new. It might have been respect. It might have been fear. It was hard to tell with insectoid faces. And if we refuse these terms? He asked. Yuna allowed herself a small smile, the first smile she had shown in this hall in 7 years. Then nothing changes, she said. We go home. We keep building. And you keep wondering what we will build next. 29 species signed within the first week. The smaller species signed fastest. The Drenhi, the Vashan, the Tenari, and the Oruli rushed to the table, as if afraid the offer might disappear. Mid-tier species followed, species that had never had a strong opinion about humanity either way, signed because they saw which direction the wind was blowing. The Pelori hegemony held out for 2 months. Their government debated internally. Their military commanders argued with their diplomats. Their intelligence services filed reports that all said the same thing. Earth was not bluffing. Earth was not weakening, and Earth was not going to stop. On a quiet afternoon, without ceremony and without a public announcement, the Pelori signed. The Uthari communion was the last. Their pride would not let them move quickly, but their pride could not protect them from the truth. They had spent decades calling themselves the galaxy's natural leaders, and a species they had dismissed as vermin had outbuilt, outplanned, and outmaneuvered them without firing a single shot. They signed 3 months after Yuna's speech, and their delegate's hand shook when he pressed the seal. In the months that followed, the galaxy began to change. Pilot Unji started a training program for alien pilots who wanted to learn the Class 7 drive. She was patient with them, even when they struggled, even when they asked how humans had built something so advanced. She simply said, "We had a lot of time to think." Captain Dowan took command of the Hwasong after Admiral Teho retired. Taeho moved to a small house on the coast of Jeju Island, where he spent his mornings watching the sea and his afternoons reading old books about history. He did not give interviews. He did not write memoirs. He had done what needed to be done, and he was finished. Lieutenant Hana, now promoted, was assigned to Earth's new galactic embassy as a senior communications officer. On her first day, she transmitted Earth's first official message as a full and equal member of the galactic community. She did not know what the message said. That was above her rank. But she remembered the night she had sent 142 notices into the dark, and she thought about how different this transmission felt. That night had been an ending. This was a beginning. Ambassador Yuna returned to the Accord Hall one final time. She had been elected chair of the newly formed Interstellar Equity Council, a body she had proposed to ensure that no species, human or alien, would ever be silenced in this hall again. When she took her seat at the head of the table, she looked around the room and saw faces watching her with something that looked almost like hope. And in her bunker beneath Gangwon Province, Director Suji sat alone at her desk. The sunset file was closed. Its purpose was fulfilled. She opened her terminal and created a new file. She typed the code name slowly, letter by letter. Dawn. Because Suji understood something that the rest of the galaxy was only beginning to learn. Sunset was never about war. It was never about revenge. It was about proving that the species they had mocked and silenced and dismissed had been carrying the weight of peace all along. Humanity had followed every rule, honored every treaty, swallowed every insult, not because it was weak, but because it believed, foolishly, stubbornly, humanly, that peace was worth the pain. And now that the galaxy knew what happened when humanity stopped being patient, maybe they would finally learn to be grateful. Suji closed her terminal, took off her glasses, and rubbed her tired eyes. Then she went back to work. There was always more work to do.